Hey BookTube, it's Angie. So I have a little bit of a different kind of video today. Talk about the book, The Science of Kissing. I held this a while back, maybe a couple months back I think, and I decided to pick it up this month since it's, you know, Valentine's Day and couples and all of that, so I thought it might be kind of appropriate to pick it up these days. It was interesting. It basically talks about the science of kissing. What this is Sheril, Kirshenbaum, the author, she originally wrote, I forget if it was a online magazine article or a blog post, something like that. She started with a topic similar to this on a blog or a online magazine, something like that. Had just done a little kind of blurb post thing about it, and it got such big response, and so many people were interested and emailed so many questions to her about the topic that she decided to go back and get a little more in depth with it and talk to scientists and psychologists and researchers in the field of relationships and biology and things like that, and try to answer some of these questions that people came up with. So what she does here is she starts with the science of kissing, and as things tend to do with one thing leading into another, she doesn't just talk about kissing, she also gets into the science behind relationships, how we find our mates, what pulls us together when we come across a potential mate, or what pushes us away, what doesn't work, what turns us off. She gets into sex and chemical reactions and pheromones and hormones and all of those kind of things. So it was a pretty interesting read, actually. It wasn't super in-depth. I mean, they're quick little essays about different types of topics within the field. She talks about links between us and other animals in the animal kingdom and how they act in similar situations, and overall I guess it was about a 3 for me. There were a lot of interesting little factoids in it. So what I thought I would do for this video, rather than doing an actual review kind of thing, because there were some interesting things that I thought you guys might get a kick out of, rather than doing a review, I mean, as always, I'll put the link to my written review down below, but for this video I thought I would do kind of like graphic collection of little factoids I pulled from the book that I found interesting, that I thought you guys would get a kick out of, as well as some clips of me just reading some interesting passages and you know, just sparking some conversation with you guys. So hope you enjoy, and here we go. Here is the first encounter with safety and love. Morris hypothesized that through our lives we associate lip pressure with these feelings. Later in life, we seek similar experiences in other relationships, and kissing will come to promote a special connection between family members as well as between lovers. It also allows us to convey warmth and affection through an expression we begin to experience in infancy. There's been a great deal of literature about the importance of the relationship between mother and child, and how this may dictate other encounters throughout our lives. Some readers will note that with this theory of kissing's origins, we are approaching territory popularized by Sigmund Freud. He too proposed that the drive to kiss began during infancy. The child, once deprived of its mother's breast, seeks similar pleasurable sensations throughout his lifetime through thumb sucking and other behaviors. The big difference between the views of Freud and Morris is that while Freud viewed kissing as a symptom of breast deprivation, Morris described it as a way of rekindling positive experiences from infancy. Although we do not have clear memories of our earliest years, puckering up to nurse in a mother's comforting embrace probably does have a lasting impact on us, as lip contact itself becomes entwined with feelings of love and trust. Many anthropologists believe that the first kisses may have been delivered via our noses rather than our lips, as we closely inhaled the scent of our loved one's cheeks. Many early cultures became accustomed to what is called the oceanic kiss, so named to describe a traditional greeting in Polynesia. Such a kiss involved going back and forth across the nose to smell another person for the purpose of identification, and probably served as a reliable means to recognize and reconnect with relatives and friends, and perhaps even provide clues about a person's health. And we make fun of our dogs. Over time, a brush over the lips may have come to accompany this practice, eventually leading to the evolution of kissing as a greeting. This could have started the tradition of the social kiss, in which we welcome friends and community members, sending the message that we're glad to see them and have missed their company. It's important to note that whether or not your intentions are romantic, to kiss another person on the cheek or elsewhere, or to sniff him or her, it's necessary to move into that individual's personal space. To get this close, there must be some level of trust or expectation. Thus, delivering a friendly kiss or sniff or receiving one amounts to an unspoken gesture of acceptance. What's particularly powerful about the sniffing theory is that we have many accounts of this greeting among indigenous peoples. In 1883, for instance, the British South Seas explorer Alfred St. Johnston published Camping Among Cannibals, in which he described how a tribesman in Fiji smelled his hand in a courteous and respectful salutation and farewell. Another example comes from Charles Darwin's description of the so-called Malay kiss. The women squatted with their faces upturned. My attendant stood leaning over them, laid the bridge of their nose at right angles over theirs, and commenced rubbing. It lasted somewhat longer than a hearty handshake with us, and during this process they uttered a grunt of satisfaction. So even today, many cultures continue to show affection by smelling a loved one on the cheek. The traditional Canadian Inuit knik, or Eskimo kiss, does not actually involve rubbing noses together as commonly believed. Instead, it's kind of a nuzzle sniff. To properly bestow a knik, you press your nostrils against the skin of a loved one and breathe in, thereby suctioning the skin of the recipient against your nose and upper lip. The Maori of New Zealand practice a similar custom. In 2007, a team of psychologists from the University of New Mexico published a paper suggesting that even though estrus, what we call being in heat at peak fertility, is concealed in humans, men may still be able to detect it on a subconscious level. The researchers came up with an ingenious way of studying this by examining the tips earned by 18 exotic dancers at a gentleman's club. It's for science, y'all. These women recorded the onset of their periods, the dancers, shift hours, tips earned during 2 months, or some 5,300 lap dances. And the results were intriguing. Dancers earned on average 70 per hour when ovulating, 35 per hour while menstruating, and 50 per hour for the weeks in between. Notably, women on birth control pills did not show an earnings peak. Although the New Mexico scientists aren't entirely sure what to make of this result, and the sample size was limited, it suggests that although modern women do not visually display rosy bottoms, estrus in our own species may not go completely unnoticed. I just thought I would throw that in because I thought that was pretty funny. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, a feisty young male bonobo named Bandaka lived at Lola Ya Bonobo Sanctuary. Like many little boys, he enjoyed bullying the girls, and poor Lodja was frequently his victim. Bandaka would pull at her hair and take her toys away, acting like a brute in the sanctuary nursery. Freaking boys. The matriarch of their group didn't discipline Bandaka for his bad behavior, so things went on like this for quite a while. Then in 2006, Bandaka and Lodja were transferred to the adolescent level of the sanctuary. Their group's leader forcefully put Bandaka in his place whenever he misbehaved. But just then, the most unlikely friend approached. Vanessa Woods watched as little Lodja wrapped her old enemy in her arms, comforting him with a gentle kiss. The pair spent the rest of the day together as Bandaka groomed Lodja, friends at last. The heartwarming story of Bandaka and Lodja represents a classic case of kissing behavior that demonstrates the way other animals express affection for similar reasons that we do. Not surprising when you consider that humans and bonobos share about 98.7% of our DNA. Bonobos nurse by pouting their lips, much like human infants. Parents have further been observed to kiss feed their young, and later in life, adults become avid open-mouth kissers. My favorite example from anthropologist Frans de Waal involves a zookeeper who innocently moved to accept a kiss of greeting from a bonobo and was astonished to feel a second tongue in his mouth. So, like us, bonobos kiss for a variety of reasons. Known as the most amorous of the great apes, they often use sex rather than aggression to solve conflicts in their female-governed society. That's right. That's how it should be done. They kiss for reassurance and to firm up their relationships with other members of their community. They've also been observed to kiss after being alarmed or frightened, and often do so to express excitement after there's been clamor in the community. When it comes to kissing, they're among nature's most prolific practitioners. Woods reported seeing bonobos in the Congo kissing and nibbling at each other for up to 12 minutes straight. Coco, a female lowland gorilla, was born in 1971, and over her life has been the subject of the longest continuous language experiment ever performed upon a member of a species other than our own. Dr. Penny Patterson has taught Coco over 1,000 signs. Further, she is capable of understanding around 2,000 words of spoken English. Among her extensive vocabulary are the sign and vocalization for kiss. When the time came to find Coco a suitable mate, Dr. Patterson showed her video footage of males in a zoo, so she would be able to decide which one she wanted to meet. Gorillas like choosing their own partners, so you might say Coco was video dating. According to researchers, Coco would give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to each individual depending on whether or not she liked what she saw. That is, until the moment she saw a 400-pound male named Nadume from the Brooklyn Field Zoo outside of Chicago appear on the monitor. Coco pressed her lips directly to his image on screen, leaving scientists with no question as to who she preferred. So I thought this little section in here was pretty funny. This talks about some of the connections we have between mythology and the tradition of kissing under a mistletoe. I had no idea that one of those connections would be with the Norse god Loki. So in Norse mythology, we find the story of Loki, an evil shape-shifting god who plots to kill Balder, a god of light. All plants and animals, all metals, even fire and water, had vowed to Balder's mother, Frigga, not to hurt her son, with the exception of one plant that was not required to take the oath, the mistletoe. Loki, disguised as a woman, tricks Frigga into revealing this omission. Then he collects the mistletoe, makes it into an arrow or a spear, and gives it to Balder's brother Hoder, who fires it at Balder and kills him. This is a great tragedy, but in some versions of the story, Balder later arises from the dead, and Frigga forgives the mistletoe and transforms it into a symbol of love, further proclaiming that any two people who walk beneath the plant must kiss. Another myth comes from the ancient Druids, priests of Celtic Europe who believed the oak tree was sacred. The mistletoe, growing as it did upon the oak, was also a subject of worship. As the Roman writer Pliny writes, the Druids, for so they called their wizards, esteem nothing more sacred than the mistletoe and the tree on which it grows, provided only that the tree is an oak. The mistletoe is very rarely to be met with, but when it is found, they gather it with solemn ceremony. The wizards would cut down the mistletoe, which could not be allowed to touch the ground. They believed the plant had near miraculous powers as an all-purpose medicine and as a female and animal fertility enhancer, and much, much more. A third story comes from the ancient Babylonian Assyrian Empire. Melita was their goddess of beauty and love, equivalent to the Greek Aphrodite or Roman Venus. At the temple of Melita, young women would honor the goddess by standing beneath the mistletoe and were required to give up their bodies and make love to the first man who approached them. Oh my god, my husband is never gonna let me live that down now at Christmas. Like, no, you don't get away with just a kiss. Get back over here. It is unclear whether kissing was involved, however, because the custom does not seem to have been common in that era or that part of the world. It was probably some just guy walking by like, that's totally a thing now. You have to do me right here. It's a thing. I don't know. I haven't heard about it anywhere else. Nope, it's totally a thing. It was also during the Middle Ages that a business-like kiss was employed as a legal way to seal contracts and business agreements. Many men did not know how to read or write, so they would draw an X on the line and kiss it to make it legal. This carried over in the way we write X today to symbolize a kiss, as well as the expression sealed with a kiss. The kiss between a bride and a groom was also viewed as marking a kind of legal business agreement, crystallizing all the responsibilities marriage entailed.
Is this a kissing book?
With the advent of the ability to tell narratives visually through film, kissing took on a life of its own. The first on-screen lip lock was captured in 1896 by the Edison Company, entitled The May Irwin John C. Rice Kiss. The entire film lasted less than 30 seconds and simply consisted of a man and a woman half kissing, half talking, followed by a full kiss. They were dressed in formal attire, and Rice sports a rather large mustache. Furthermore, the exchange seems rather perfunctory when compared to today's passionate Hollywood kisses. At the time, however, people were shocked. One review by publisher Herbert S. Stone began, "The spectacle of their prolonged pasturing on each other's lips was hard to bear." Less than 30 seconds, y'all. Such things call for police interference. Again, less than 30 seconds. Police interference. But again, there was no keeping the kiss down, especially not in Hollywood. Soon, silver screen kisses were everywhere, and not just between men and women. In 1926, Don Juan featured the most kisses thus far, a total of 191, provided by John Barrymore to co-stars Mary Astor and Estelle Taylor, among others. The following year, Wings featured the first on-screen male-male kiss on the lips. That was 1927. When a soldier kisses his dying friend. In 1941 came what was reported the longest movie kiss at the time, at 3 minutes and 5 seconds, between Jane Wyman and Regis Toomey in You're in the Army Now. 1961's Splendor in the Grass, meanwhile, is credited with featuring Hollywood's first tongue kiss between Natalie Wood and Warren Beatty. Then, in 1963, Andy Warhol released Kiss, a 54-minute 16mm film that consisted solely of kisses between different couples. They lasted about 3.5 minutes each, longer than Wyman and Toomey. Warhol's record was finally broken in 2010 when Tina Fey and Steve Carell kissed for 5 minutes during the closing credits of the film Date Night. I didn't realize it went on that long. Perhaps what's most extraordinary about this is that much of it took place during the years of the Moralistic Motion Picture Production Code, popularly known as the Hays Code, which was in effect from 1930 to 1968. The code stated that excessive or lustful kissing, lustful embraces, suggestive postures, and gestures are not to be shown, the fear being that the scenes of passion would stimulate the lower and baser element. Unless they were essential to the plot, they were not allowed, and as a result, a couple's kiss would often culminate in a show of suggestive imagery to hint at what was to come next, such as burning flames, for instance, or ringing of wedding bells. It's actually one of the things that cracks me up most about old silver screen movies when they do the cutaway. On-screen kissing survived the Hays Code easily enough and is now a fixture of Hollywood entertainment. Granted, it's not always been without resistance. In 1985, an era characterized by rising concerns about AIDS, the Screen Actors Guild sent out 7,000 letters to agents and producers stipulating that performers should be notified in writing if a film project required them to participate in open-mouth kissing. Such scenes were described as a possible hazard to the health of actors in light of the lack of clear and consistent medical opinion as to how or in what manner this disease communicated. Still, there can be no doubt that due to our cultural products which carpet the globe, we have done much to teach the rest of the world about our particular form of the lip lock. So, I wanted to talk about this study I read about in this book, but forgive me, there's a bit of a tongue twister German name I gotta go over here. So, for German people watching this, I apologize if I'm not even close to being right about this, but doing my best. Okay, so in here it says, it talks about some studies they did in Germany regarding kissing and relationships and things like that. One of the studies I thought was interesting. They said, according to psychologist Onur Gunderkun, of the Ruhr University of is it Bochum or Bochum, Germany. Anyway, about 2/3 of us tilt our head to the right when we approach for a kiss. In 2003, he reported as much in the journal Nature after conducting a rather voyeuristic experiment. Gunterkin watched love-struck partners, aged roughly 13 to 70, kiss in public places like train stations, airports, parks, beaches in Germany, Turkey, and the United States. To qualify, the kisses under observation required lip contact, a clear head tilt, and a lack of encumbrances such as bags, luggage, or other objects that might influence the tilt direction. Interestingly, this tendency towards rightward head tilting does not seem to correlate with the percentage of us who are right-handed, because righties are almost 8 times more common than lefties. It's been suggested by Gunterkin that instead we may adopt our head tilt direction while in utero. Not wild? As fetus moves and tilts its head in the womb. However, others expect the preference to set later in life as we nurse. Studies show that up to 80% of mothers cradle their babies to the left, regardless of whether these moms are left or right-handed. To nurse, the infants then have to turn their heads to the right, so it's possible many of us learn to associate a rightward head tilt with feelings of affection early in life. Talking about promiscuity. Because when we talk about kissing people, promiscuity is bound to come up at some point. At least once in somebody's life. But in here it says, not everyone responds the same way as far as kissing and promiscuity and how they approach the subject and how they feel about it. Humans vary in the number of receptors for dopamine dotting the tips of our nerve cells, and research suggests that a high number may predispose a person to sexual promiscuity or addictive behavior. I'm just going to say right now, this is not giving anyone an excuse to jump out and go bang a bunch of people. I'm just talking about the science. For instance, geneticist Dean Hammer at the National Institute of Health has reported a possible correlation between a gene that codes for dopamine receptors and erotic urges in men. Hammer reported that 30% of men possess this promiscuity gene. It is in quotes in here. Sorry about that, guys. It said my battery pack just went dead, so I have to change positions while I'm having this thing charged. It's talking about the so-called promiscuity gene. Geneticist Dean Hammer at the National Institute of Health has reported a possible correlation between a gene that codes for dopamine receptors and erotic urges in men. Hammer reported that 30% of men possess this promiscuity gene, and they have on average 20% more sexual partners than average men. Women can probably experience similar addiction to sexual novelty due to the increased uptake of dopamine, but the relationship has not been studied in detail. Just one example of the way that, until relatively recently, female sexuality has garnered significantly less attention under the scientific microscope. Because ladies know, we've all gotten the guy that told us, it's not about you. But let me tell you, just keep pushing past those guys until you get to the guy that says, it is about you. And then also make it about him, and you'll be in a great relationship. But if a single stretch of genetic material may code for a wandering eye in men, the odds are good that it could encourage the same behavior in women. I thought I would close this on kind of a funny section that Kirshenbaum wrote about what she calls risky kisses, or aka grown-up cooties. And there are the riskiest kisses of all. Fortunately, they're probably unfamiliar to most readers since they involve going to extraordinarily dangerous extremes. Still, it's important to survey the most unusual styles of kissing behavior that can lead to dire consequences. Yeah, dire. The recent rise of interest in vampires, yeah, we're going there, particularly among teens, makes the practice of biting one another to draw their blood necessary to mention. In short, just don't do it. It actually says that. Just don't. Swapping saliva through traditional kissing is vastly safer than literally injecting gobs of potential dangerous microorganisms directly into the bloodstream of your beloved. It's probably the worst conceivable way to show you care, given that you're exposing them to a potentially life-threatening situation. Many of the germs in our mouth are harmless until they break the skin barrier. In fact, doctors consider the human bite to be of greater concern than most snake bites or broken bones, and often send human bite victims straight to the emergency room. So remember the lesson from preschool, and do not bite your loved ones for any reason. Unless you're in a mutually accepting relationship that invites that sort of thing. That's for grown-ups though. The outcome won't be as sensual as it appears on film and may require medical intervention. So basically, don't do it if you don't know what you're doing, or just don't break skin, amateurs. Along the same lines, it's also inadvisable to make any kind of oral contact with the mouths of wild animals that would be carrying deadly diseases. In summer of 2009, for instance, the Lee County Health Department in Florida and the CDC put out a search for 3 boys, aged 10 to 12 years old, who had been seen kissing a dead rabid bat in Florida. Who knows what they were thinking, but they took a tremendous risk. There is no cure for rabies. Fortunately, the average person will not encounter these unique, dangerous kinds of kisses, but there is one further risk that can truly put you in a life or death situation. You might think you're out with the perfect person, about to embark on an epic romance. All the signals seem right and you go in for the kiss. But suddenly, instead of being excited and aroused, you, or your partner, is covered with hives. Oscar Wilde once remarked, "A kiss may ruin a human life." While I doubt he had peanut butter or split pea soup in mind, allergens can be a serious mood killer, or in extreme cases, even a deadly poison. For the majority of us, this scenario has probably never crossed our minds, but food sensitivities can rear their ugly heads at the most inopportune time. The usual suspects are shellfish, eggs, and milk, but peanut allergies are the main cause of fatalities. In extreme cases, kissing has triggered an immediate anaphylactic reaction from contact with trace amounts of the substance on another person's lips. Symptoms can develop quickly and without warning, including difficulty breathing, facial swelling, hives, a dangerous drop in blood pressure, shock, loss of consciousness, and sometimes death. A recent study published in the New England Journal of Medicine found that about 5% of people who are allergic to nuts or seeds reported experiencing adverse reactions from kissing. When 17 volunteers consented to be kissed by someone who had just consumed their particular allergen, reactions occurred in under a minute and involved itching and swelling. Some subjects experienced wheezing, and one required a shot of epinephrine in the emergency room. These results suggest that although kissing isn't normally considered a life-threatening activity, food allergies do threaten a small percentage of the population, even after a partner has brushed his or her teeth. So, brush your teeth and floss before you go in for it. So, I just thought I would share some of those fun facts. Thought you guys would get a kick out of those. Like I said in the beginning, it's just a fun little read. I think I gave it like a 3 overall. There is a lot of cool science in here, fun facts, but I think some of the trouble I had with it was, while there were some fun bits in here, there were also parts that got kind of dry, that I didn't find that interesting, and then there were other parts that got a little bit silly and started to veer into like Cosmo article territory. So that's why, as a whole, I rated it about a 3. But I thought I would share some of these facts and say, you know, if this video entertained you, maybe see if your library has this, check it out, and give it a read through. And because there are a lot of other facts in here that I didn't go over. These were just some of my favorites. And yeah, thought I would share that and give you guys a laugh. Hope you learned something, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.